Okay, let's now develop more methods for the student class. Especially, I want to say, given a particular course for students, I want to set its marks or get its marks. For example, given student number 1, I want to know what their marks are for the, let's say, 2030 or 1021. And we want to have a better way to do it rather than saying S1.courses at position 0, dot marks, right? We want to have a better way to do it. So now let's simply go to the student class over here. And then what I will do is, let me add in the methods first, and then I will test it to show you exactly what we can do. Okay, we got get description, add courses. Okay, let's say insert in between over here. Okay, we're gonna have two methods. I'm gonna define them simultaneously, and then after that I'm gonna trace them, and then I'll show you some improvement as well. Okay, later on. So now the first one, integer. Let's say get marks. Okay, so now I'll say, given the title of course, return the marks of that course. Okay, for this particular students, we can say if the course does not exist, let's say return -1, for example. Let's say. Okay, let's say if the student doesn't really is not really registered for let's say 3221, in that case you will ask about what the marks is. You would say -1. Okay, so now it's a get marks over here. So all I need to pass as the input is what the title is for the course, right? We assume that each course can be uniquely identified by its course title. All right. So over here, so what should I do? Okay, so now I can say integer result is going to be let's say 0 to begin with, and then return, let's say simply result over here. Let me spell it properly. Okay, so now what can we do in the middle? The idea conceptually is very simple. For example, if I want to ask you about what the course, what's the marks for 2030? If 2030 is already registered in my array of courses, I can simply go through the array and then go one by one from 0 until NOC -1, right? We talk about the upper bound for the array to actually go through the array using a loop. We'll go from 0 until NOC -1. If the result is actually there, then of course we'll actually return the marks. Otherwise, we're actually going to return -1. Okay, we're going to search through the array. Basically, you're going to see it's a very standard way of doing things to go through the array using this pattern over here. So we'll say for integer I is assigned to 0, I is less than this.noc. Okay, I already explained in the previous video in details why you shouldn't use this.courses.length. That will give you a null pointer exception, but you want to know why. Okay, and then we're going to say I++ over here. Okay, so now what should be the result? Basically, we can say as soon as we have found the course, we're going to actually return. We're going to exit from the loop and return the marks, right? So now what I can say is, how about just marks over here? Initially just 0. And then also we can say marks over here. Okay, so now we can also declare a Boolean variable over here. Okay, let's say a Boolean variable. Let's say we have found the course. Okay, found the course initially is simply just false. Okay, and then we want to say and it is not the case that we have found the course. Okay, we've talked about this particular loop pattern in the previous tutorial video. I assume you're okay with it. Okay, initially false. Okay, and then we're going to say if the current course we're looking at, so we can say this.courses at position I, and then we can say dot title. Okay, either you can say dot title, we can say dot get title. That's also fine. Okay, I will say get title maybe. Okay, and then there's a string value, and I want to say dot equals. Okay, hopefully you're now okay with the dot notation over here, right? And then we will say if that's exactly the same as title over here. If that's the case, and now we have found the marks, we can say found is assigned to true, and also we can set the marks to be returned to be basically this dot courses at position I dot get over here dot get marks. Basically, that's what we can do. Okay, so now we're basically just checking to see whether the current course its title is the same as the title we're looking for. If it is, we're going to return the marks. Okay, so now outside the loop, we're going to try to check to see this. If we exit from the loop, we don't know whether it's found or not. If it is found, if it's not found, basically, if the found remains to be false, okay, that means we should really return -1. Okay, we'll simply say marks is assigned to just -1. In that case, we return the marks. So my solution is just one particular way of doing things. You can feel free to modify to your way of doing things as long as you don't use any Java library classes. Just use array only. Okay, so that would be one way to do it. Okay, so now let's define another method over here to set the marks. Okay, it's going to be something very similar. Okay, so now I'm going to say over here, I'll say given the title of course, set the mark of that course. Okay, if the course does not exist, do nothing. Okay, so basically we're going to define a mutator method, okay, as opposed to accessor method. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit not so thorough in this particular method since we have gone through so far in the video series. So now I will rely on you to actually see exactly how this method can be defined and think about what might be other ways you can do things. Okay, so now I'm just going to define that. So mutator method here, public void, I can just add public to that as well. Okay, so every other class can use it. So public void, and then I'm going to say set marks over here, and then I can set up use the string title of the course to find out the course objects, and then I can say set the integer marks to be that particular marks. Okay, the structure is going to be very similar. Okay, I'm just going to copy and paste some code over here. Okay, I'm just going to say that. Okay, Boolean found false, okay, something like that, and then I would say found will be true, and then I will simply say the marks. So now rather than saying this, I'm actually going to say this dot courses I and set marks to be the marks. What I'm doing over here is if the current courses has a title the same as what I'm looking for, then I will simply go to that corresponding course and then set its marks to be marks. That's what I would do. Okay, so now after this, so I'm done with this method here. Let's try to trace them very quickly, and then I will actually try to show you some improvement. Okay, before we trace it, let's do some tester very quickly. Okay, so now let's simply just go to this particular, let's say test number, I think 3 would be okay. Okay, let's let's do something that corresponds to our previous diagram. So if I just go to, I believe it's is it tester 2? Yes, tester 2. Okay, so now let me close all so you don't get confused. So now if I can right click on student tester 2, and then I would say copy here, and then right click at the package and say paste. Okay, so now I'm going to name it 4. Okay, student tester 4. Okay, now in student tester 4, what I will do is I'll simply, so now this is essentially something we did previously. I'm going to get rid of print out about aliasing. So what you will get is some structure like this. Okay, I'm just not going to bother with the instructor for the courses just for simplicity. Okay, but you know how to do it. I'm going to get rid of the faculty over here, and also I don't have any links to the instructor. Let's say only the marks for the students to focus on that. Okay, so now we got exactly this structure over here. Okay, so now we got Sanhei, Jihei, S1, S2, and also they are registered in C1, C2, C3 in the way that we talked about before. Okay, I'll let you to actually find out the correspondence between this code over here and this diagram over here. They are really corresponding to each other. Okay, that's something we covered also thoroughly in the previous video. What I want to test very quickly is as follows. I can say system.out.println over here. If I just want to get the marks for both of them, I can say s1 dot get marks over here. And now let's say because they're classmate, right? They were the classmate for, let's say 1021. I want to know what their marks are. Okay, they simply refer to the same course record over here. Okay, they share the same course record. Okay, so now what we can do is we can simply do, let's say this can be also possible because, for example, let's say they are simply taking this course, but they're taking this course together, but also at the same time they might be a partner for maybe a particular project. So they might receive the same mark for the particular project. That's why I just made the course record. I'll make it a little bit general over here, but you see the idea. Okay, maybe for other courses, okay. Anyway, so for 1021, they share the same record because let's say they are project partners. Let's say so they share the same marks. Okay, so now I can simply say, let's do this. Let's do 2030 first. I can say the set marks to be get marks for 2030. Okay. Okay, I can say first of all. Okay, did I do anything over here? Okay, let me just make sure it is okay. Okay, so now I'll first of all do the following: s1 dot get s1 dot name. Okay, that's the name of the students plus has marks for 2030 over here, and then it's going to be the result from get marks over here, right? And then after that, I'm just going to show you one example over here, and then I can say s1 dot set marks over here. Let's say I'm going to set 2030 over there. Initially, it's simply, as you can see, initially it will just be 0. Let's set it to be, let's say, maybe 60 over here. Okay, so now let's see what's going to happen. Okay, let's verify by Eclipse, and then we're going to trace that very quickly to actually show you exactly how it works. If I now simply say student tester 4 over here, I can say run as Java application. You will see that, oh, actually, I forgot. Okay, after this, I should really try to do another one. Okay, this is after. Okay, let me just put system.out dot print line over here. After setting 2030 marks to 60. This is after that. So now if I simply say run, so you can say initially before I set it, Sanghe has marks for 2030 is simply 0, which corresponds to this diagram, which is initialized to be the default value, 0 over here. And then if I try to do, to say S1 that set marks to be, for 2030 to be 60, in that case, it's going to say S1 is going to say Sanghe has marks for 2030. In that case, that'll be 60. It's been set properly. Okay, let me do just one more. How about that? If I do, what about 1021? Okay, I can also do this over here. So S1 dot set marks 1021. Let's say for 1021, let's say 90 over here, and then so after setting 2030 and let's say 1021 marks. Okay, just say we have set marks. Okay, and then we're going to say over here, I'm just copy this line. It's going to be for 2030 and also 1021. Okay, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. So hopefully by now you're very comfortable with, you know, the dot notation and also how to check the objects, right? That's really the essence of object-oriented programming we're exposing you into. Okay, and then 2030, 1021. If you try that, you're going to see exactly that. Before setting the marks for 2030 and 1021, it's 0. After that, she got actually 60 and 90. Okay, I think that'll be enough just for tracing purpose. Okay, we're going to see exactly how things can be traced for get marks and also set marks. Okay, let me switch to iPad now. Okay, so now let's have a look at the code on the iPad. So now let's see exactly how we can trace it. Okay, well, I don't necessarily have to trace in the full details because many things have been covered already. But let's just to the point that you understand what's going on. So now first line over here we're going to call s1.getMarks for the first time. Okay, so now s1 is a context object. We're going to call getMarks over here. So then we get marks, we're going to execute it. So now we're going to do some initialization for the marks, and then we're going to set a boolean found to be false. That's something we covered already in the previous loop. So I wouldn't bother so much with the found. Okay, so now we're going to go into the loop. So now think about this .NOC in this case. NOC, because S1 has been registered for 2 courses, okay, so now NOC will just be 2. So that means this .NOC will be 2. So that means for I, we're going to try 0 and 1. Only 2 iterations. Okay, that's some insight you want to get about this pattern over here. So now, for the very first iteration, what I will just be 0. So for the very first iteration we get, and every occurrence of this will just be S1, right? So this will just be S1. So the very first iteration, S1 dot courses at position 0 dot get title. Okay, what is this? S1 dot courses is going to give you this array at position 0 is going to refer to this particular course record objects over here. When you say get title, it's just going to return its title, which is 2030. So up to now, we know that it's 2030 for the very first iteration. And then we say dot equals the title. What's the title over here? You can see it's 2030, which means we have found it. Okay, so now over here, dot equals over here is simply just 2030, right? Exactly this input. We know that it's going to be true. So that means after the first iteration, we're simply going to set the found to be true. That means when we check the header next time, not true is going to give us false. So we exit from the loop. So there's an early exit. And then after we set the found to be true, we also try to really get the marks. So the marks will be exactly this expression over here. So how do we get it? It would be exactly this. So it will be, so this will just be S1. So S1 dot courses at position 0 get marks. Okay, so S1 dot courses at position 0 again is referring to this course record object over here, and then you get a marks, which will be 0. Okay, so that's exactly how we get 0 from this particular case. Okay, you do the similar tracing for the second one, except that I want to draw your attention to this. For the second one, we're going to say S1, the same context object that get marks, and then 1021. So now that means we are now title would just be 1021. So what does that mean? That means in the very first iteration for this one over here, we're going to say now the context object is still S1. So when you say S1 dot courses at position 0, now the first iteration dot get title. Oh, sorry, the first iteration, yes, the get title. Let's write it down properly. And then what would that be? Well, we said before, we know before very well, it's simply just going to be 2030. And now we say that that would be equal to, now the course we're looking for is now 1021. Okay, 1021 is not equal to 2030. So in the very first iteration, it's going to be false. That means we want to go to the second iteration, right? So when we go to the second iteration, I will be incremented by 1. Let me just be a little bit lazy here. I will be incremented by 1. In that case, S1 dot courses at position 1 is now referring to this particular course over here, and is referring to this object here, which has a title 1021. In that case, get title in the second iteration will give you 1021. In that case, 1021 is equal to 1021, so it gives you true. So that means after the second iteration, you'll actually get to return the marks over here. And the marks will simply be S1 dot courses at position 1 that get marks. In that case, they'll give you also 0. Okay, the only difference is in this particular call, you exit after the first iterations, because we found it right away in the first course, right? In the second iteration, we actually exit after the second iterations. Because in the first iteration, this is not the title that we're looking for, which is 1021, right? So that means we only get to find it in the second iteration. Okay, that's exactly what's going to work. And then in this case, of course, we haven't, in the found, we simply set it to be true. So not true will give us false. So we don't really set it to -1. Of course, you can try. At the moment, you can see S1 for Sanhei is now registered into 3311. You can definitely try the following. If you say S1 dot get marks over here, and then you try 3311, I guarantee it's going to give you -1. Let's double check very quickly, okay, just for completeness. And now if I try that over here, if I try over here, let's say system out of print line, over here I'm going to say 3311 over here. Let's see what's going to happen. Okay, if I try that, it's going to say -1. Okay, you can see -1 in the beginning. Okay, let me just undo my comments over here. Okay, just very quickly. Okay, so let me just go back again. So you don't have to worry. I just did some cutoff when I was doing the snapshot. Okay, so now has marks for, let's say, 3311. We know that for S1, Sanhei, she was not registered for 3311. In that case, I'll just get for 3311 over here. Let's see exactly what's going to happen. If I try to execute the code, it's going to say for 3311, it's going to be -1. Okay, that's something I didn't really include in the page, but you get an idea. So this means if we got 3311, that means after the second iteration, we simply get to the end of the, we're going to reach the final value that's allowed by NOC -1. Okay, we're going to exit from the loop. Okay, so now how do we set the marks? It's going to be very similar. Okay, I'm going to show you quickly. If we want to set the marks, again, the context object over here is S1, and when we call set marks over here, okay, if we call the method here, so now let's say for the first one, 2030, okay, and then we want to set the marks to be 60, for example, right? So now we're going to do exactly the same pattern. So you can see there's some kind of repetition over here, the way we do the loops. So that's why we're going to improve this in just a moment. So what I would do is, we know that very well, for 2030, for the very first iteration, we're going to find it exactly over here, right? Once we find it, we're going to actually call this particular line over here. So let me write it down. It's going to be this dot courses at position 0, okay, and then dot set marks. Okay, in this case, it's going to be 60. Okay, if you follow this path over here, as this is simply just going to be the context object S1. Okay, S1 dot courses, and then at position 0, this has the matching title 2030, and we set the marks to be 60. Okay, that's what we do. And similarly, if you try the next line over here to set the marks, so now you can see S1 is still the context objects and calling the same method, but now it's 1021 as the title. And if we try that again, we're going to execute this particular pattern again. We know that the first iteration is going to give us a title 2030, which does not match 1021. So we had to go to the second iteration. So what we should do is we go to the second iteration, and then you can see the title will just match. So what we'll get is, we'll say, for this one, S1 dot courses at position 1 dot set marks. In this case, we'll set it to be 90. Okay, so if you follow this particular line over here, you can see that's a part of the body of the loop. And then if you just follow that, S1 and then courses at position 1, and then we're going to set it to be 90 over here. So these are the two changes we have to make. You can see things are getting a little bit more complicated, definitely much more complicated than last week. So now that's why drawing diagrams is really important for you to see how your code is working. Okay, that's about the get marks and set marks. Okay, so now I would like to point out to you, as you can see, we got lots of repetition over here. Let me highlight it to you. You can see, especially over here, you can see Boolean found false, and this loop pattern over here, and something like this. Okay, over here, you can see exactly identical over here, and also found is true. Okay, so we got lots of repetition over here. If it is possible, it would be great if we can somehow factor this out into a helper method so that we can just reuse the same block of code by calling the helper method. That'll be very good. Okay, conceptually, this the blue lines I just highlighted are basically doing the following. You're basically finding the three blue lines I just highlighted in both methods, finding the matching title, the course objects that has the matching title. That's basically what they're trying to do. If we can try to do this in a helper method and try to call the helper method twice, that would be the best way to do it. So that's why I would like to show you very quickly how things work. So what I would like to do is I'm going to go back to the student class over here. Okay, I'm just going to modify that right away. So now I've got two versions for you. So now let's go to, let me define the helper method first. How about that? So now over here, I'll simply say there's a helper method. Helper method reused by get marks and set marks. And there might be other methods we can use as well, but for now, just get this one here. Okay, so now let's see over here. Let me just write out the methods for you to you directly, so you can learn from that. I'm going to say integer index of, and then I'm going to say string title. Okay, basically I'm going to say this. Given the title of course, return the index of the corresponding course objects. For example, if you look at here, if the title we're looking for is actually 2030, the corresponding index should be 0 for S1. If the title we're looking for is 1021, and then S1.index of 1021 should be 1. Now, if we change the context object, it should work the same way. So now, if I say S2.index of 1021, the index should be 0. If I say S2.index of 3311, that should be index should return 1. Okay, that's exactly how it works. So rather than returning the objects, we just want to return the, let's say just the index. Okay, the course objects, just the index. So now, if the title does not exist, return -1 as the index, because -1 is simply not a valid index telling you the title does not exist. So what we can do is we can say integer initially I is simply -1 over here, and then return let's say simply I, or I can say index. That's okay. Okay, there's an index we would like to return over here. So what we like to do now is we can say we can use that loop that we just talked about. We can basically repeat the loop that we actually identify as repetition. And we're going to only put a loop over here in this helper method and going to reuse it. So integer I is assigned to 0. I is strictly less than this .noc, and also not found. Okay, I'm going to put a found back in just a moment. Boolean, and then found is assigned to false, exactly like how we did it. And now we're going to say if this courses at position I, the same as before, get title equals over here title. If they match, that means we have found this particular course object. But what we're going to record is not only that we're going to say found is true, so we can already exit, but also we're going to say index is simply reassigned to this particular value. Okay, it's going to be reassigned to I, just like that. I'll leave it to you to actually see exactly how this loop works, but I'm going to trace the code very quickly with you as well. Okay, not found over here, and then I forgot I should say I++. Okay, that's about this helper method over here. But now, how can we make use of this helper method? If we want to make use of it, we have to give the string title, which we do in the get marks and also set marks. And then we're going to use the integer over here. Okay, let me show you exactly how I can do it. Okay, so now for get marks, all I got to do is over here, I'll simply say, let's say integer index is simply this index of the title, just the input over here. And then I'm going to find out where the object is. I can say course record. Okay, I can say C is assigned to this courses. Just go to that corresponding index. Oh, I want to check to see if the index is -1 or not. I can say if the index is strictly larger than 0, which means it's not actually a valid index, that means the title exists. In that case, I can say course record And then I can say C is assigned to this courses over here at position I, index over here, and then just that. That's just the course objects. And then I can say marks is simply assigned to C dot get marks over here. Okay, that's what you can do. You can also put it into the same line. You can simply say marks is assigned to this courses at index dot get marks. Okay, let me just show you here. Okay, you can either do a line like this, or you can say marks is reassigned to this courses over here at position index dot get marks. That also works. Okay, let's keep this one line version here. You can use either version as you prefer. Okay. Otherwise, if that's the case, we can simply say marks is simply reassigned to -1. Okay, that's one way to do it. Or I can also say marks is initially just -1, and then if we ever get a chance to reassign that to marks, that will also be fine. Okay, this one also works. You can also check the logic by yourself. I'm going to trace it together with you. Okay, there's a get marks. Let's go to set marks. It's going to be very similar over here. Okay, what I will do is I'll simply say integer index. You can see if you look at the code over here, there's no loop that we are trying to write here. The loop is actually done in this particular helper method here. Okay, so now we can say integer index, let's say, is assigned to this index of, and then title over here. Okay, and then once we get an index, we can say if the index is not -1, if the index is larger than 0, in that case, we're going to do something. Otherwise, we do nothing. So we're going to say, again, you can set it directly. You can either say right course C is assigned to this courses at this position index, which is guaranteed to be valid. And then you can say C dot set marks. And then you can set it to be the marks. So the marks over here correspond to the marks over here. Okay? Or alternatively, let me show you the one-line version over here. Let me just put it into comments. You can also say this courses at position index dot get marks. Oh, sorry, not get marks, set marks. Set marks over here, and then you say marks. Okay, so that will compile. Okay, everything should just work. So all I have done was I simply factor out the loops in the get marks and also set marks into a helper method over here. And the helper method simply just return an integer index, which can be either -1, for which the title does not exist in this list of registered courses for the students, or the index can be larger than or equal to 0, in which case it is valid. And then I'm just going to call this particular helper method in both of the methods for get marks and also set marks. You can see this is where I call them over here. It's going to be very useful over here. Okay, so now I kind of don't repeat the same loop for twice. I simply can reuse it by calling the helper method for as many times as I like. So now let's do as a completeness. I would like to trace very quickly about this new fragment of code by using index of. So before we trace the program, let's run it on the tester to make sure everything still works. But I just spotted one very bad typo made by me. I'm going to fix it for you. Okay, it's a logical error that I just made. I just spotted that. You can see that over here, we are trying to call the index of over here. Okay, so now the index can be -1, in which case the title simply has no match. Otherwise, it can be 0, can be 1, can be 2, can be 3, and etc. Right? The valid indices. So now, when I say index strictly larger than 0 is not really correct. It should be larger than or equal to 0. Because when index is actually equal to 0, it's denoting the first object in the array. For example, if I'm looking for 2030 over here, then the index return should be 0. That should be valid. Okay? That's something I made a very terrible mistake. But now let's fix it. So that should be larger than or equal to 0. Okay, let's go back to student tester 4 over here. Nothing has been changed in the tester. We only changed the way we implement the set marks and also get marks. These two methods over here in a better way by calling a helper method. Okay, again, remember you gotta change this back to larger than or equal to 0. Okay? It's really important that you did it. Okay. So now, if I go to student tester here, if I execute the program again, I'm gonna get, okay, you can see for 2030 initially 0, 0, 3311. There's no matching course, so -1. After that, we'll get 60 and 90 for the 2 courses. Okay, so it's still working even after we do the index of change. So now I would like to trace it quickly on the iPad to see how that works. Okay. So now this is the program over here. Again, you really want to make sure you actually do it larger than or equal to, and also larger than or equal to. Okay, it's really important. So now what I would like to do is to start on first line over here. Okay, the first line. This line here, we're simply gonna say s1.getMarks and then 2030. So that means title will be 2030. Okay. Okay, so now what would be the index? So that means we're going to say index of title. So so you can see every occurrence of this is going to be replaced by s1. So it's as if we say s1 dot index of, and then the title over here is 2030, right? It's as if we say that. So what would that be? So now to really trace this one, we have to go to this particular helper method over here, and now the title is now 2030. Okay, so now basically running the same loop again, right? That's something we traced just earlier in this video. So starting with -1, say the index is -1, we may reassign it if we find we have found the matching title. So I'm going to set a Boolean variable accordingly, okay, and then we're going to do it. So now all we have to do is, because we're now doing context object as s1, and then s1 and also s1.noc will just be 2. Okay, so now we're going to run 2 iterations. Which iteration are we going to find the matching title? In this case, you can see s1.courses at position 0. In the first iteration, we're going to find out exactly 2030. So now that means index will just be reassigned to 0 in this case, right? So once we found the matching title in the first iteration, we're going to set the found to be true, and this is going to make the state condition false and can exit from the loop. That means eventually we'll simply return 0. Okay? So now that means this particular helper method call is going to return back to us 0. It tells us at position 0, we have the objects for course record that has a matching title 2030. Okay, that's what it means. And then what we will do is we simply say go for here. So 0 over here, 0 larger than or equal to 0 is true. Okay, so that means we're going to go into this line over here, and then we'll say this again is s1. So we're going to do s1.courses, which is exactly how we did it previously, and index 0, which is what we just returned, dot get marks. Okay, if you do that, it's simply just going to be s1.courses at position 0, which is over here, and then get marks will just give you 0. Okay, it's the same as before. Okay, what about the second call? Let's do that very quickly. Second call is going to be very similar. You can see that when we try to execute this one over here, the same context object, so I'm going to rename that to be the same. Just the title we're looking for is 1021. So now the title is now 1021. So now we're going to make this particular method call again. So we're going to call s1.index of, and now in this case it's going to be 1021. So now what should be the return value from that? Let's see. So we're going to call this particular method, helper method here. So now the title will be 1021. Okay, for 1021, we're going to set the variables accordingly as before. So now which iteration do we expect? In the very first iteration, when I is simply just equal to 0, we are basically looking at position 0, which has no matching title here because 2030 is not the same as 1021. When we go to the second iteration, what we will get is, when we go to the second iteration when I is equal to 1, in that case, we're going to see this dot courses. I'm basically figuring out this line here together with you. Courses at position 1 for the second iteration dot get title. Actually, we did this previously. And then dot equals titles. And then the title here is simply 1021. Okay, if you go to this dot courses, which is over here at position 1, okay, which has this object here, 1021, which matches 1021. So that will give you true. So that means we're going to reassign the index over here to be 1 in this particular call, right? And then eventually we're going to return 1. So that means we're going to return 1 over here from index of, and then 1 larger than or equal to 0 is going to be true. So that means we're going to execute this line here with index being 1. So what we will get is we're going to get s1 dot courses at index which is 1 dot get marks. And then in that case, it's going to just go to that particular array and then give you mark 0. Okay, hopefully you can see how things are working now. The critical thing is really the index of helper method. Okay, let me do just one more tracing together with you, just for completeness. So how do we trace, for example, this line over here, right? So now how do we set the marks? It's going to be very similar. So now when you call this set marks over here, which is here, it's also going to make a method call, helper method call index of. And now in this case, it's going to be 2030 being the title. And now we know pretty well it is going to return 0, right? We know it's going to be the same as before. It's going to return 0, 0 larger than or equal to 0, because we know that the corresponding title matches. So now that means we're going to call this one here with index being 0. So we get this dot courses over here at position 0, which is valid, dot set marks. And then to be the marks that we are setting is 60. Okay, so this 60 over here. So what do we do? So this, which is S1, okay, S1 over here. Okay, so S1 courses at position 0 over here, referring to this object here, set the marks to be 60. Set it to be 60 over here. Okay, so that's how that works. What about the final one? The final one over here, let's see this. Let's use blue. The final one over here, we're calling again with S1 being the context objects. And now we want to find a matching title for 1021. So now when we call this set marks the second time, so we also, again, we're going to call this one here. So this dot index of, let's say over here, is going to be 1021. So we know pretty well where is 1021 for S1. Okay, the context objects is exactly this second object over here with the matching title at position 1. Okay. So now we know that it's going to return 1, just like before. Okay, so now what do? We're simply going to check to see if, so now 1 larger than or equal to 0 is going to be true. So I'm going to execute this line over here. So what we have is this dot courses over here, the index we know for this particular case is 1. At position 1, because at position 1 we have the matching title 1021. Okay, and then dot set marks, and then for this particular case, it's going to be set to 90. So now this will be 90 over here. Okay, so that means we're going to go for this courses at position 1. This is actually S1, right? We talk about context object S1. So S1 dot courses at position 1, and now we set the marks to be actually 90. Okay, so now eventually what you will get is from the Eclipse, one is 60, the other one is 90. They have been changed accordingly. Okay, so now basically what I've done over here, I show you two versions of how to get the get marks and also set marks to be working. In one case, we just have an index of helper method to really remove code duplicates. The other version, which also works, I simply got get marks and set marks by just repeating the same pattern of the for loop. You can use either one, but I would suggest try to understand what's going on with the second version over here and try to learn from that. And I would encourage you to have your own solution for similar pattern for other problems.